Welcome back to another AB Brunch, your Sunday rendezvous with the hockey coach, Coach Frenchy, directly for the beautiful country of Thailand. And we have to go all the way in Ontario, Ottawa area, to find a co-host on this great episode number 22, Mr. Marko Larabi, back in the house tonight.
Yes, sir. Episode 22. Wow.
Already,
Oh, man.
Marko, unbelievable.
Yeah.
This is year number 1 for the AB Brunch, your Sunday rendezvous, and people come every day talking about the Montreal Canadiens. Every Sunday morning, 11 o'clock a.m. until 12 p.m. We do this show every Sunday. So great to having everybody back with us. We are middle of February. When you talk about middle of February, yeah, we are about 2 weeks before the end of the trade deadline. We already have some team makes some big splash. Honestly, a couple of days ago, the Toronto Maple Leafs trade with the St. Louis Blues. Montreal played against Toronto last night. You can see first game for Ren O'Reilly. So we're going to talk a little bit more about those information. The Montreal Canadiens around the team happening this week. Review weekly. Add news, update for injuries, a situation trade deadline with Ken Hughes. And the preview week number 19, that's what we have on the program. And finally, Marko, we have the subject of the week for the show this week. If I can find it, that will helping us. And here we go. Can HABS finish bottom 5? This is the biggest question, Marko, we have for the show this weekend. For the AB Browns, so we're going to go through those information. Going to a little bit more about the schedule of the game of the Montreal Canadiens for the remaining of the season. Not looking good, Marko. It's not looking good.
Yeah. Like we've known for a while that the dog days of winter were going to be really hard for the Habs, right? Like they had one of the tougher schedules. So now we're there, and you're getting to that tense point of the season during trade deadline. I'm sure it's very tense in the locker room. There's certain guys that don't know what's happening. So, we'll see. Like, there could be some other exciting things going down the stretch too. Like, are there going to be, certain players like a Farrell that signs a entry level contract and joins the team, and so there's going to be some interesting things to look out for. But the next 2 weeks here with the trade deadline, it's going to be different from last year. I think that's the buzz right now is it might be a bit more quiet. But coach, like whenever we lose against Toronto, like we could have like a 5-8 game losing streak, and it wouldn't bother me, especially when we're trying to get a good draft pick. But it just always hurts. It's just never fun losing against Toronto. But it is what it is. Like at least we're still 2-1 this year against Toronto, and I think as a management team, like it's probably high on the priority list, every year to have a good showing against Toronto. So far, we'll talk about the week, but it wasn't a terrible showing last night. But yeah,
we're going to talk about this. But before we dive on the first subject of the night we have this morning, I want to wish welcome back for Roger Delaney. He is the oldest member and a supporter of the Hockey National Show, and unfortunately for him, he had some kind of really bad surgery a couple of weeks ago, but now he's back with a little bit speed recovery for him, and he popped up yesterday for his second time. So I just want to mention he's a big fan of the Hockey National Show. So Roger Delaney, we wish you the best speed recovery, and we can't wait to see you back again with the family of the Hockey National Show. So let's start it with a warm-up show, Mr. Marko. Are you ready to rock and roll?
Yes, sir. Warm up.
Here we go. We are back, Marko, for honestly, what we do at the beginning, we do the review of the week of the Montreal Canadiens. And we have to go all the way to Sunday last week when we left each other last week. The Montreal have a game against Edmonton Oilers, and not me and not you and not many people was predict a W against the Edmonton Oilers last week at the Bell Center, 6-2. Then they beat the Chicago Blackhawks 4-0 Tuesday night for the 3 straight W. This is the second time of the season they have a 3 straight W. But unfortunately, they lost the last 2 games. One again, Carolina Hurricane, the number 1 in the standing on the Metropolitan Division. And then the Toronto They lost yesterday by the score of 5-1. So what we do at the beginning, we talk about what happening about this, and then we'll let you go and give us a bit more some insight of what you saw during the week.
Yeah, like so the first two games, like I think we left off on Sunday, hoping that we would continue. What I was looking for last week was not necessarily, again, we're never looking for results, right? Like what we're looking for is the continuity of whether they're going to continue to play the right way, right? So overall, I would say this week, against Edmonton, Edmonton was probably the biggest example. Really, really strong game. It wasn't one of those games that we saw early at the beginning of the year where the score doesn't really represent the game. Like it wasn't like the shooting percentage was too high or the goalie performance kept them in. Like goaltender played well, but I think the score is pretty representative of what the game was, right? But Montreal does have a bit of a history of being able to shut down McDavid, right? Like now we used to think that was only because Philippe Danault was there, right? But I think overall, like maybe it's just something psychological with McDavid. Even Crosby, right? Like Montreal has kind of a good track record of shutting down top players sometimes. So c'est des bêtes noires, comme on dit en français, right? C'est des fois, sometimes there's just a team that a certain team doesn't play well against. So I think for Edmonton, Montreal's kind of one of those teams that they just don't really play well against, but not to take away from that performance, right? Chicago, man, was that ever hard to watch? It wasn't really the fun game to watch or anything. It was kind of like a really slow ping pong game for the first couple of periods, and then Montreal just kind of took the game over. They played a good, patient game. They didn't fall into a trap game, which again, like, is a good sign of them being able to play within their identity and everything. So good game there. Chicago is just sorry, Chicago Blackhawks fan. I know you don't like it when I rip on the Blackhawks, but man, are they bad? It's just really hard to watch.
Was a
I
tough
feel
one.
sorry for. Oh, but the Carolina game. I think the score isn't super representative of what we saw there. Like Montreal was right there skating with them for most of the game, and then there was just that crash down. There was like 3 minutes I think where Carolina scored three goals. One of the rare times where you see Martin Saint Louis kind of lose his temper and try to get his team to kind of refocus a little bit and not worry about the scoreboard and just focus on getting back to what they do. And so what I was looking for, in the next game, I think it was similar with the Toronto game, right? Like it wasn't the best first period, but they were hanging in there, 0-0. They actually scored the first goal in the second period, and I think they were hanging with them during the second period. And I think they were losing 3-1 going into the third. So what I was looking for going into the third was, okay, are they going to have a total meltdown like they did in Carolina, or are they going to be able to push back? So I don't think it was either one. Like I don't think it was a meltdown in the third period, but they didn't really push back as much as I would like. They did miss a lot of good chances in the second period to actually take a lead, like some 2-on-1s. Hoffman had a really good chance by a pass from Belzil, and so Joseph Wall, I guess, like played the game of his life in the NHL, and
First W.
so it is, yeah, first W as a Leaf, in the NHL. So good for him. But overall, I'd say it was a little disappointing. Like these are good teams. For Tank Nation, I'm sure they're happy to see them lose. But again, like to me, regardless of what's going on, I always want to win against Toronto, right? So
Yeah.
even though it might not be good for the team, I would rather beat them. But it is what it is. A couple of concerning things creeping into their game, though. I felt, in particular, Nick Suzuki. I didn't love his game at all. Not just because he's not producing, but we're seeing things that we saw at the beginning of the season, like not being above the puck. Poke and hope is what I call it, like poking and just hoping that the puck will go the other way, being in a bad position, allowing odd man rushes the other way. Like I wonder, coach, if at this point, if Saint Louis wouldn't be better served to experiment to just take down his minutes a little bit. His minutes
They
have went
started to do
down.
it. Like he play below like his normal minute. He's a play average
Yeah,
20 minute. The last two game. That's what I would say to you.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
a little bit different, but yeah, you're absolutely right about that. I think drop. Our HP still gives that line some kind of opportunities. I think Anderson could
yeah,
score one time yesterday.
yeah,
But yes, if you look about Nixky, I don't think so. It was like his best game yesterday against Toronto.
yeah. Like again, you just don't want those things creeping. You don't want those habits creeping back in, right? Like everybody was. What we were kind of gushing about last week was the fact that
I'm sorry
everybody
to
was
cut you,
kind of,
Marco, but
yeah,
when's the last time you see Nixky play only 17 minutes?
yeah, yeah. I think they need to do that a bit more, right? Like listen, like it's kind of like we've said you were talking about this last week, like just play the fourth line a bit more, roll the lines a bit more.
That's
Again, I
happening.
would, if there's if there's one game I would like to see Suzuki play 22 minutes and play well, it would be against Toronto. That would not. It seems weird to me that Saturday night is against Hockey Night Canada. That's the game that you choose to kind of bring down his minutes is kind of weird, but I agree overall with that strategy. Like because again, you see some players sometimes you just can't they can't handle those minutes. And the one criticism about Nick Suzuki so far is his pace, right? Like nobody questions his hockey sense and his skills and everything else. It's his pace of play that's always been kind of a question with him, and sometimes he can become a little bit lackadaisical. So maybe experimenting with that. See if I would rather have 18 to 20 minutes of like really good two-way Suzuki than poke and hope Suzuki that's just trying to add points.
Yeah, so I just wanted to go to another side where it was a bit more positive. Montreal have a three straight win. It was the last week, the Super Bowl weekend. Montreal beat the Islanders and overtime, I believe, 4-3. And then the Mike Madison score. And then Sunday, they beat the Edmonton 6-2, Chicago 4-0, like you mentioned to you. But one thing I think was pretty good, the power play. Where
Yeah,
how many months we talk about the power play does not produce. And I think it's a mix of the, maybe I could be wrong, but Mike Madison back at the lineup, an installation mode of Justin Barron as a quarterback, both of them as a quarterback power play. And the fact like they modify because Cole Coffee is not there, put us all together. And, whatever Mike Hoffman doing a little bit better. I think those two players, Madison, Barron, control a bit better since this power play some we did not see since the beginning of the season. And that's fun, honestly. That's I feel like the power play was pretty good the last. And well, in fact, and one Coffee is not there until the game yesterday. It was 24%, one of the top 10 in the NHL and the power play.
yeah. Like I think you raise an interesting point there, right? So, um, what does that mean exactly? Like, does it mean that they're having to like they're open to looking at more options, like teams are guessing a bit more because it's not telegraphing every single play they're trying to get to
Exactly.
Caulfield, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's very revealing in a way. Like it's great to have an option like Caulfield, but you need to be able to at least kind of provide him that space by being able to execute those low plays like crease plays and things like that to open up that one side for him. So yeah, I think Barron has really improved his play and has been pretty effective on there. Matheson, I found the first couple games he was back, I wasn't loving him on the power play that much, but he's definitely keeping things simple, getting shots through. Like a great example with the Anderson goal yesterday. I felt just to comment a little bit on Toronto. I felt that's what Montreal was doing really well last night is keeping things simple. The one thing that makes me nervous about watching Toronto play is I still feel they were playing a little bit too fancy of a game. To me, that's what's been their problem so far in the playoffs. They don't go to the middle. They don't pay the price enough during the playoffs. O'Reilly should really help with that, right? We won't talk about the Leafs too much, but that's the one thing I noticed yesterday is Montreal at first, anyways, was really keeping things simple. There's a couple times where they just were getting shots through, having people go to the net. That's hockey, man. Like you want goals, you go to the front of the net, right? That's how hockey works. So yeah, like I think the power play definitely is humming along. I think they had 5 goals in their last or 7 games or something like that. So
Yeah.
pretty big difference. But what does that mean though about Caulfield? Like, hopefully they learn those lessons and kind of adapt when Caulfield does come back and take that as a good lesson, right? That you
Yeah,
need to
I think for
carry
me
your
it's
play.
like because when Caulfield is there, Wesniewski on the other side. And I think
Hmm.
that's maybe one he should maybe not always be there because he always like I call that the hook, right? He's coming up, he's coming down, shoot about to the
Yeah,
dots. And if you compare like
yeah,
Barkov does it, but Barkov does not shoot a lot for that way. He move up and down and he open up more the door for the other side on the back door. So maybe that's a
yeah.
reason why there. But talking about the flip side, the last two
RHP
games without Kirby
RHP has
Dach.
been very good in the bumper too.
Yeah, Kirby Dach was not played, and you can see that just because we lost one player, every chair now fall apart because they
Yeah,
changed the line, they changed the center line, and now you have to must fight all those. Because of him, he must fight two line minimum. So you can see the chemistry was not always there. Corey Schoenemann back in the lineup because, woof, bad night for Mr. Chris Whiteman against Carolina. 5 of the 6
oh
goal was on the ice, finished with -4. And you can see that part. One thing as I mentioned before you jump on Kirby Dach, Marco, is like, again, Toronto yesterday, Toronto scored 3 goals because they won the battle around the board. If you remember, like Matthews beat one time
Matthews, yeah.
Justin Barron, he get a pass on Michael Bonding. I think it was the second goal, the first goal. Then Matthews beat behind the net, Kovacevic, I believe, and he passed at the back door, and Nylander score. So you can see the battle was easier for Toronto yesterday against Montreal Canadiens. But yeah, Kirby Dach did not play, so maybe you can add a little bit more and your insight about Kirby Dach.
Well, I think we all noticed. Very noticeable, absence when it comes to Doc. Like it makes such a big difference. To me, what is the most interesting is watching the play of Hoffman and Dadonov, who we'd all been gushing over, over the last couple of weeks, and how better they were playing. But makes a pretty big difference when you're playing with Belzile versus Doc, right? So were they, were they still okay? Yes, but you can tell a huge difference, right? And to me, that's what makes a special player, right? Is not just being able to produce yourself, but you're you're elevating people that you play with. So I know there's been a little bit of a debate over the last couple months about people debating, okay, like who's actually going to become the best center between Doc and Suzuki? Like it's an interesting question. Suzuki, I think he's proven that he can make other players better, but I don't know to the same extent. Caulfield can generate a lot of his own offense, right? He has that's how good of a weapon that he has.
Yeah,
So, I think it's clear that Doc is somebody that does do that, and that bodes super well. So the absence was very much noticed for Tank Nation. I'm sure they were happy to see that. I don't find the games as fun to watch when somebody like Doc is not there.
yeah,
Same thing with Jack Eye, right? Like they're just we're fans, right? Like you still want to enjoy, you want to watch players that you like and that you're interested in seeing how they're going to evolve. And so, in the short term, it's probably a good thing that he misses a couple games because maybe the outcome, especially last night, could have been different if Doc was playing, right?
yeah,
One thing I was curious is I know that Saint Louis didn't want to dismantle that Dvorak, Drouin, and Armia line because it's arguably been their best line over the last couple games. But it would have been interesting to try Drouin at center with that line at least for a little while when he could see that things weren't really working. Because Belzile, like we all love Belzile, but essentially he's like centering your third line right
yeah.
now. So,
He struggled on face-off yesterday, like only
oh
10%
yeah,
yesterday. So, but
yeah,
would be interesting. Montreal now is 2-2-0 during the week, 23-29-4, 151 goal again, goal for 205. This is a bit bad, but 8 on the Division Atlantic. They never moved. They are still on the 26 ranking in NHL, but people behind them are trying to catch up them. So it'll be interesting what's going to happen. That's what we'll talk about the next couple of minutes about the bottom five from Montreal. On the flip side, Florida Panthers lose a game yesterday, very bad, 7-3. It's not looking good for the Florida Panthers. If you are a fan, you are the team who play the most game in NHL, 59, and they have 3 teams behind them with only 2 points behind, with 4 or 5 games in hand. So Florida Panthers fans, obviously. The 22 game, I believe they have to finish with 15-7 or 16-5 or 6 to make the playoff. And they never play over 520 since the beginning of seasons for the Florida Panthers. So I think Montreal on that.
They've been on a crazy run. Like they've been they've been playing really good hockey, but it's pretty unsustainable. Like it's very misleading though when you look at the standings. The NHL.com should by default have it by points percentage, not by points, right? Because it's very misleading when you look at the standings that way.
Yeah, because right now they are 19, but behind them they are 1, 2, 3. They have 14 behind them with better winning percentage, so they can drop from 19 to 22, 23rd.
Yeah.
And Ottawa is barely behind them by 0.05. So it'll be interesting. But, to conclude the first segment of the show, who stood out for the Montreal Canadiens this week, Marko, for you?
This is a tough week to really identify someone, it's a weird week, I guess I'll say, kind of like I was mentioning earlier, like not in a good way. Suzuki stood out to me last couple of games, just with his play not being as elevated. So in a good way, I would say, in a bad way, Suzuki kind of stood out to me. Again, just because I'm really nervous about those habits creeping into his game. I don't want to put too much pressure on the guy, but he's really he really needs to step up, right? And I don't really care about the points. It is what it is. Like, but where's he at now? He's like at minus 20 something, right, for the season. We just need him to right the ship a little bit more. Just play the right way. The points will come. We understand that you're playing with Anderson and with Harvey Pinard right now. But so that's to me what stood out, right? Is because the biggest thing I'm concerned about is them continuing to play the right way and continue to build that culture towards the end of the year. And Nick Suzuki, the captain, needs to be at the very top of the list, leading that charge. So, and I guess secondarily to that, like we just talked about, what stood out to me is the impact of when Dach is not there and how much that tells us about how important he's becoming to the team. So to me, that's kind of what stood out.
Yeah, great comments about this. I think we just talk. I think the power play for me will be the sort out of the week. But if you think about consistency, because honestly, I have 2 good game and 2 bad game. Like you can say, oh, Jonathan Drouin have like 8-9 points the last 10 games, but the last 2 games he disappear. Jonathan Drouin did not create something like that. But if I talk about the most consistency game after game, and maybe I'm going to surprise you, but you have 2 players for me. One is going to be more like RHP. He continues to produce every game, whatever. He don't have no point today. He +1 to shot on the net, but he create opportunity for Josh Anderson, Nick Suzuki. When you said you're thinking like Suzuki drive the line, it's RHP. He drive that line by the way he plays. So I have to go this week with RHP. 7 goals in the last 9 game, and then 7 goals, I think, the 12 game he played so far with the Montreal Canadiens. So for me, I have to go with RHP.
Maybe an honorable mention to Matheson as well, too, who, has been, like I said, doing a lot of good things, skating the puck out of pressure, getting pucks through on the power play, so honorable mention to Matheson, who's been pretty consistent.
Jordan Harris had a good week, of course, too, for the Montreal Canadiens. Yeah, and then I would say another player, Justin Barron. I think he's another one I will set out. Jake Allen, great game again at Edmonton Oilers, honestly. And last night you cannot point him. He have a face to 41 shot. He keep Montreal in the game at the first 40 minutes. Without him, I think this game could be already like 4-5-1 already. So Jake Allen is another one we can mention about this. So great to see that stand out. The stood out of that one. Injuries. Again, Montreal did not give us any information about Kirby Dach. In fact, it's not COVID-19 related. That's one thing I heard. I don't know if you heard something else about him.
No, no, no.
Okay.
Just sick.
Secondly, I don't know what's going on with Jacky. Do you know what's going on with Jacky?
I think we just from what we saw on the ice, but yeah, no reports from the team. Yeah.
That's honestly. And then Monahan, but he practices with a no-contact jersey, and then he practices along with a contact jersey. So we don't know what's going on with Sean Monahan.
But we did hear something from St. Louis, though. We did hear something from St. Louis when it came to Monahan, which was
the plateau.
Kind of ominous. Kind of ominous, yeah. Being up like that's probably the worst thing you could hear, right? That he's just plateauing. That's code for like we don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, absolutely about that. So would be really interesting about this. So that's pretty much what we got. Gallagher is still on the same way. I think Armia came back Sunday last week, so that's one thing we forgot to mention. This last Sunday, Armia was come back in the lineup for the Montreal Canadiens. Justin Barron left the game against Carolina. He came back yesterday, so that's the last one we can hear about. Other fact, the rest they are same. Caden Coley is still skating with the Montreal Canadiens. And any news about Jordan Munson?
No, but before we jump off this topic, though, like I think a couple weeks ago, I think it was on this show we were talking. The medical, the HABS medical team starting to come under some scrutiny for some. Like I think Kent Hughes had made some statements that they were going to be looking at things. I think it's becoming evident, like that they may really mismanaged Monahan with allowing him to play those extra couple games on that broken foot. I think that was my theory early on, and my concern early on. If you go back and watch our show when it happened, that was my concern. Is okay, yeah, you can play on a broken foot and not aggravate it, but the medical team should be sophisticated enough to understand that. You know that old song when you're a kid, coach, there, like your ankle connects to your other bone, and like a whole body is connected, right? So if you break your foot and you can't put all your pressure on your broken foot, then you're going to overcompensate on another part of your body. And for somebody who has a history of hip issues, that's probably not a good idea if you're trying to preserve an asset to try and trade him. So it looks like that's what happened.
Isn't it? It was the groin when he skated back in December alone. He's just got a groin extension. Yeah.
Now I've heard that it's more the hip again. So we'll see. Like either way though, like for somebody who his body is all of like I'm not like a physician or anything, but I understand the human body well enough that it's all about balance, right? Like if you're when you're a pro athlete, like you're like a fine machine, right? So if there's a certain part of the machine that's not working well, then the other part of the machine is going to work hard and it's going to overheat it and it's going to put stress on it. And it just so I hope that this summer they really take a look at that and we love Dr. Mulder. He's done a lot of great things for the organization, but let's bring in some 21st century medical practitioners that can look at these athletes, in a different way and make sure that it's more strategic in what we're doing.
Yep. The next subject, we'll talk about Sean Monahan, the value increasing or not about him. So we're going to move here. Sean Monahan trade. At some point, it was increasing. I will tell you why. Because if you look about the line at the center, you have BoOvat, you have Ranu Roddy in front of him, and then you have Jonathan Tace, and then after that, it was Sean Monahan as a center. We had Tarasenko and other players, Patrick Kane, everything. But if you think about only the line, so Montreal Canadiens right now, unfortunately with the injuries, without this, they would get something very good in return from Sean Monahan because he was the next player and for the next 2 weeks going to be maybe on demand, and now it looks like he's not going to be playing in the New Jersey Devils. So it'll be really a big risk for the team want to get him if he got traded and if he's ready to play. All those questions, red flag, we don't know yet. We'll just talk about this situation. But how do you feel about Monahan? Do you still believe he's going to be traded or not? Or what are you at about Sean Monahan?
Yeah, I agree 100% that like they were so well positioned to take advantage of this, right? Like Jonathan Taves being scratched off the market is was
Yeah,
amazing
because
news.
injury now.
You know, like that's yeah, yeah. So, you know, there's still some like there's always going to be some players that you don't expect. Like there's a Bukestad, you know, there's certain teams that are looking at Bukestad, you know, who can fill a role. Obviously not at the same level as Monahan, but you're going to look at the pros and cons of okay, like do we the upside for Monahan is a lot more, right? But the you know Bukestad, not that he has like a great history of not being injured, like he's been injured a lot too, but at least this season he's been pretty healthy. To me, I think the best option, and we know that Kent Hughes can be creative like this. I think the best option is to create a conditional trade, you know, based on. So let's say you can trade Monahan for a first, based on if he plays X amount of games for your team, right? So if you play if he plays X amount of games and he plays X amount of playoff games, then it becomes a first round pick. But if he doesn't, then it's a second round pick. I think that's the best way that you're going to protect yourself with the team. You know, like you can give them that flexibility because otherwise it's going to be really hard to do that. You could argue the same thing for Edmondson, right? Um, these are trades that we've seen before, you know, and you don't see a lot of people talking about that option right now. But to me, I'm sure Hughes is exploring all of those options. You know, I'm sure is there's a lot of people that are keeping an eye on the situation. You know, but let's not forget O'Reilly didn't play a lot of games for St. Louis before Toronto
Three,
moved on him either, right?
3 games.
Yeah, yeah. So you know, and you could see that there's one thing that troubles me though is I think it was Doug Armstrong, you know, in his interview after trading for O'Reilly, you know, asked like, what you know, do you think it would have been better to hold out a bit longer to try to get more? And they're like, he admitted like there's not a lot of teams out there dangling their first round pick, right? It's not a huge market for it because the draft is so good in 2023. So, you know, that's why probably that deal happened so fast, you know.
I think for me,
So
Marco, when you talk that way, I feel two more teams right now. I feel maybe three. I feel Boston, Dallas, Edmonton.
Colorado though too,
They never trade the
because
first
they
round
need
pick.
no, but they like that's fine. But I think they need a center, right? Like I don't know how comfortable they are going into the playoffs with what they have at center. But maybe they look more at a Bukestad kind of solution more
I
so
feel
than
right now
someone with
because there are no center anymore, like that top six, or we said, or the effect money, and they're not sure. I think they will think now to say, you know what, we're going to go with Landeskog as a center number two and add a winger like Patrick Kane or something like that, and to go that direction at fill up center and the market.
maybe like I think Rantanen would probably be the most likely guy to do that. You know, I don't know how much Landeskog has played at center, but I think I've seen Rantanen play that. I don't know how good he is at
But
faceoffs or
it
whatever.
comes for the end turn. That's my, if you talk about that way, so it's more from the end turn, fix the center number two, and then put McKinnon with maybe Lestagag and Nikushin and with Likonen and whatever it is. I think that we go there and then maybe add another
What about Jonathan
winger
Drouin?
around on the
What
market.
about Jonathan Drouin? Jonathan Drouin.
I don't feel this over there. I understand with
It's
McKinnon, but he's not going to
low risk,
helping.
right?
He's not going. He's
But
going to
low
go
risk, you know,
helping
like
you. And you have to think about this. He's not going to helping you on the top six, right? And the playoff start, fiscality, everything like that. He
he's
disappear. Secondly,
he's had good playoffs before though, Drouin. He had a
yeah,
really good
but
playoffs when he played for Tampa.
his power play, do you put Lekanen or Drouin, right? Do you use Nick Christian or you not use Nick? You know what I mean? I don't see there. Now, what I've said to you, in plus and power play, he's not have no spot for him. They are already everything over there. So give us something in return for only a 20-second power play and put at the bottom. You go with Drouin, New Hook, or do you take New Hook or Drouin, or you got Rodriguez or Drouin, or do you take Comfort over Drouin? Play on the four line, I don't think so. So for me, I don't see really necessity Colorado go for Drouin, I think it would be better more like Parbachev example. That's what be that would
He's a,
be
he's a
helping
good
them
player.
more.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
he's a
But I
great
can
player.
I
Yeah,
can
I love
understand your point of
Barbashev.
view about that one over there.
Yeah.
So let's move on for what we have tonight. About this, my next thing about it was a little bit can use homework deal or no deal from Ken Hughes because we know the trade deadline's coming. We know now for the next couple of show we're going to talk about the trade deadline for the Montreal Canadiens. We just talk about Sean Monahan, but you have other um, option they can do with front player for the Montreal, definitely, and for Ken Hughes. And what do you expect him now, active or no, or not active for the Montreal Canadiens?
Man, yeah, like if I had to bet, it's very hard to bet that it's going to be a very active deadline based on what we talked about. I guess it really depends. Like, I think people are going to be really torn on this question of how critical is it? Like, is it a failure for Montreal? Because think about it, going into the year, there's a couple different objectives, right? Okay, so we want to develop and progress some of our young players. Okay, you could say that's been a pretty good success. There's
Check,
been some
yeah.
unfortunate setbacks like Slavkovsky being injured, but overall, good progress there.
Right,
The other
check out.
one
Go
was
go that way, Marco. Check about Jekai.
Doc.
All right, I think Jordan Harris
Yeah,
he looked better today. He was like 3 months ago. Kovacevic
yeah,
is the same thing. Look Kirby Dach,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Look
yeah,
Montembeau,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Caden Cooley,
So
his progression was great for him. So if you take overall and Justin Barron, whatever he did with
yeah,
Laval, since he come back with the team, it look like right now he's already an improved is a hockey player. So you nail it
yeah,
when you said that. And consider your
yeah,
subject, but I want to add more
yeah,
what
yeah.
you just
No, you're
said.
right. Yeah, no, for sure. So if you're looking at it from what is this season going to be successful? Okay, so that was one of the key things that they were wanting to be successful at. The other thing was to build more assets. So you can't really say they've done that so far. Like so they haven't really built on that. They haven't like last week I was talking about like it might be unreasonable for me to want them to do this, but if Kent Hughes wants to become a legendary GM in Montreal, if he could find a way to somehow liquidate some of those bad contracts, whether it's Armia, Gallagher, Hoffman, whatever, not the ones that are easy to move, like they did last year. That would bring him to like genius status, if he was able to do that. But I understand it's not easy to do. But the other part was okay, can you take any of these assets like an Edmonds, the obvious ones are Edmondson, Monahan, and you were hoping that either maybe Dadanoff or Dwayne would have a decent season to be able to get something for them. Now, it's not his fault. It's just bad luck. Again, though, you could argue with Monahan, depending on how it was managed, was that a self-inflicted wound that Montreal did by allowing him to play? Like, was if it was mismanaged, that's something that they need to look at really carefully in the offseason because you can't have that. It's really bad asset management, and not just in this case, but again, like I think more and more load management is going to be critical. Let's fast forward 3-4 years from now, coach, and we're a contending team, which we all hope that's where we're going. Well, having a medical team that is going to help you manage your assets so that you can be optimal at the right time of the year for the playoffs is going to be critical, right? So, so that's so far that's a 500 batting average. If you say that those were the two biggest things that they're looking to do this year, so this season wouldn't be, and sorry, the last one would be get a good draft pick. So that's three. So, the second one, it's not their fault, but you can't say it's been successful. The draft pick, which is what we're going to get to in a minute here, like can they finish in the bottom five and get an elite player? That's yet to be seen. But let's say we miss on two of the three main things we're looking to accomplish this year. Is this season a success overall? That's, I think, an interesting question. I don't
Yeah,
think we have that answer yet.
yeah. But when you talk about this, I think you should add the goal was to get another additional first round pick. That was the
Yep. Yep.
primary the targeting and whatever before the the injuries happening like Edmondson. The only player can bring that right now in my eyes is Josh Anderson.
Yep.
There's only one.
Unfortunately.
Can they want to trade him?
Yep.
That's another subject for another time. But there's the only one can bring that. It's not Edmondson, not Monahan right now. And unfortunately, they don't have a great year with the Montreal Canadiens. They talk one of the 3-4 players you talk about they could get something on the giveaway salary cap. I think the only one can be traded at this moment is Hoffman, and the only way they are maybe thinking is to retaining is half of this contract for next year. Is it possible? I don't know. 2.2 million 50 to give away Hoffman. They'll open a spot. That's possible for them. And that's pretty much they can do. The only way I would say to you, maybe it's on the off season to buy out Armia. He's the easy one to buy out because only 1 year contract. He's below at 3.4. So that's the easy one. If you want to do that, they'll pay about 1.6 for the next 2 years following that. Gallagher, they cannot do anything about this, unfortunately, at this moment. We expect maybe him to come back in the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So, unfortunately, for Gallagher, they are stuck. Possible to trade Paul Biron contract for the remaining of the season to get a little bit more leverage to get another contract in return or something like that. So there'll be something you have to follow up. But you're absolutely right. Not looking good for the Montreal Canadiens for the next couple of weeks, whatever they want to accomplish before, because injury and other aspect of what they are right now.
Yeah, it's bad luck. But so I just want to ping pong back to the thing that you said, right? So was the objective to 100% get another first round pick, or was the objective to liquidate specific assets and try to get, because if the goal was at any cost, at any reasonable cost to get another first round pick, then they might look at trading Anderson. But like the question is, it really comes down to, are you really, what are the odds of the player that you're going to draft at that rank is going to be better than Anderson? What do you think? Like if you're like, let's say you sell Anderson and you get like the 22nd overall pick, is that player going to be better than Anderson during that time? No. You need some bodies for next year and for the next couple of years, like but then on the other side, you can argue that Anderson's value will probably never be higher than it is right now.
Yeah.
Right? So you can argue both ways.
Will be interesting what they're going to do. They like Josh Anderson, what he bring on the table, leadership, everything like that. And he's honestly not an unicorn, but not many like him in NHL.
Yeah.
And if you don't make the playoff for the next 3 years, you almost waste is the best of Josh Anderson. That's what my point about him. So a lot of news to go for Ken News for sure the next couple of weeks. We're going to definitely talk about this next week for the dreaded line. We're going to give us some update. The next thing I want to talk about is situation for the Montreal Canadiens, if I can get it. The situation, because we cannot trade Jordan Manson at this moment. Not that they cannot do, but I think right now, if you look about what they have and what is coming, and you have in Laval Rocket, and you have like Lane Hudson, Logan Mayu, Adam Engstrom, and without talking about other assets, we already have Baudin and possible Trudeau between right now. They're doing well, and then you can put Fred Brother and Norlander. But honestly, Montreal can have 5 LD in Montreal right there. You have Madison, Edmondson, Cooley, Harris, and Chakai.
Yeah.
So it's 5 plus 5 almost right there. So Montreal have too many defensemen. What do you expect Montreal is going to do, or what you feel like maybe off season? I think for me the departure of Jordan Munson have to happening.
Yeah, well, again, he's an important asset, right? And again, it's all going to depend on his health, right? Like if he can, it looks unlikely that they're going to be able to move him this year unless something really changes here in the next couple days, and you have a team that is just really desperate. But I don't anticipate. To me, the right move is to wait until next year, and he'll still be, if he's able to play, then he'll still be an attractive asset, and you get return for him there. So you're right though. Like, we've known this since the summer. Like you just look at the depth chart and it just doesn't. It almost doesn't make sense. Like it's that it's that time where everybody in Montreal, Mete was playing with Weber. We're like, oh my God, we need a left-handed defenseman. So Bergevin, Timmins, they drafted every left defenseman that they could over like the 2-3 years, right? So it's good to draft best player available, but sometimes you need to draft by position a little bit, right? Like it just doesn't make sense how much left D's they have. It's insane. Um, so that's a good note though, because 3 years ago you're like, okay, Petrie, Weber, okay, like do we, who's going to be able to play right hand defenseman here for a while for Montreal? But things changed very quickly, very very quickly. So just that's a good note and a good lesson for the future. But what can they do? Well, at the bottom line is you can use those assets for all kinds of different things, right? Like we've talked about here, and coach, we've had many debates over what type of goaltender resource that they need, what type of asset that they need. But to me, this rebuild will not be successful until they secure the goaltender, right? Like you just look at any rebuild that has not went well, and it's because the goaltending wasn't worked out, right? So that is a major area of concentration, or it has to be this summer. Like we can't wait. Like you need to figure this shit out now, because
They
if
have
you
one.
draft somebody,
They have one. They have Jacob Dobes.
uh, I think like we've talked about, coach, like goaltending is like voodoo. There's
No,
nobody
but
can,
if you
like, it's
think
like,
about this, like if you go to draft, initial draft this summer, right? But this goalie
yeah,
will be taking 4 or 5 years, right? So the closest one you have is Jacob Dobes. And if
yeah.
you
What
compare
I'm
him
saying,
to
that's not good enough.
Levi, yeah, nothing else. I know he will weld Levi and the Bowman last weekend, and the Northeastern win on the overtime against Harvard. Levi was great. But if you think about the best what he bring, it is the next one I believe in is the Montreal Canadiens. We don't know what he look like in 3 years. After understand he can fill up. But I have no way they can get forget Askarov or forget Kosa or Wallstead. Those kind of defense are the goalies right there. They have to go the second option, the Schmidt, the Portillo, the Da, possible Erickson, Urson with the Flowers. It's some kind of goaltender like this, Doxel or Todal for the Anaheim Ducks. I'm sure they don't want to trade them, but that would cost you more. That would cost you not at
Yeah.
risk. It would cost you more at risk. Reinhardson, Cooley, or Jekai. If you get about
So,
this, or that
so
would cost you
if you're
an
gonna
Owen Beck to get those kind of first round pick draft.
if you're gonna go that way, then you need to have multiple kind of options, right? Like you can't just bet on one of those non blue chip prospects. So if you're gonna, so right now we have a obscene um, over amount of lefty. So I would rather at this point, have three, legitimate goaltending prospects and just see what happens, right? So I just think if you're gonna, if unless you can get a blue chip one like the ones that you mentioned, then you need to diversify your
But
risk
again, think
and
about
get
happening,
more than one.
Marco, in NHL the last 2 years, maybe 3 years, but 2 years, right? Every summer, what we talk, the carousel of goalies in NHL.
Mm.
That's what it's every year. So what happening? Montreal is going to be a part of this. They never been there because Carey Price was between the pipe for 10, 15 years. But now they don't have those kind of goaltender number one. Samsonov next year is going to be UFA. They give him a
Yep.
contract for $5 million for 5 years, example. And that's another option. I'm not saying that Samsonov like the specific one to get Montreal. It's not, but I'm talking about another option and not to sacrifice Hudson or Beck or whatever you want to make. The top prospect, not the middle prospect from Harris or Trudeau. They're not going to get those kind of goaltender. So for me, I would say it's going to be a UFA. And then after that, you're going to draft another one this summer, NHL draft 23. Every year they draft one, but they draft 5, 6, 7 round pick. I think this year they need to get a third round pick in less for Montreal, the NHL draft.
We shall see. But so the original question here is too many defensemen. Bottom line, they're assets, right? So Hughes needs to transform a an overstock or like a an advantage that they have into something that they need. So what are the needs in the organization? It's goaltending, right hand defenseman, and you could argue again it's one of those things, right? Like you go back 3 years, like we don't need left wingers. Well, we're going to need left wingers here soon, right? Like because a lot of them are leaving the organization. We have a lot of right hand shots, and some of them are pretty small. So a left hand shot with some size is another
Oh yeah,
important
Sean
thing.
Farrell's coming with Joshua Roy.
Yeah, those are small guys,
On the
right?
right side, you have Philippe Mazar with Riley Kidney. Well, Kidney plays center too, but honestly the top players coming right now. They are the top of the top for them. So
Yeah. And Beck is right-handed. Suzuki's right-handed. Dach is right-handed. So we have potentially our top three centers are all right-handed centers.
yeah.
So something to think about.
All right, let's move on and what we want to talk about. This is about 10 minutes to finishing. Canadian schedule, very difficult for the rest of the season with 26, 27 games to go. And I go a little bit deep about this, Marco. I said, okay, they have three teams they play at the below of them understanding. Talking about Anaheim, San Jose Sharks. And then I would think it was a Columbus Blue Jacket, but I could be wrong. It could be another team. I cannot remember. And then you have 15 teams they're going to play. They are on the playoff. Carolina, Tampa Bay twice, Boston again twice, Toronto one more time. You can, Vegas. And so that's a lot. They have 9 teams all above them, but not in the playoff. The Islanders, example, the Flyers, example, the Panthers, and all this. So that gives us a really difficult schedule in front of them. That brings us, because the question of the night, it was honestly, can the Montreal Canadiens finish bottom 5 after what I just mentioned about their schedule, everything, and plus the trade deadline's coming? What you will do? What do you think will happen with the Montreal Canadiens?
I think it's going to be tough. It's not impossible, right? Like it really depends on injuries. I think as well. Like if you continue to not have the personnel, like if Doc doesn't, if Doc misses more time, but it looks like Gooley is going to play some games.
On
They're
22
going to get some
game they
guys back.
have, or 23 game, 22 game, how many W you think they're going to get?
I'd say probably out of 22 games, I'll say eight or nine, probably. But they're gonna eke out some points here, like maybe they go like nine
I
and
think maybe they
four,
go
nine
with
and three.
max 6 and they maybe add 3 or 4 more point after that. Like, like 6, 15, and then, or maybe 6, 13, and 4 tie. That'll give them
Yeah, it's
16
so
points.
hard. So it's so hard to predict because we don't know who's gonna leave the team. We don't know injuries and all that. The one thing that you can never underestimate though is that all these teams, the ones that are, especially the ones that you were showing that are the 9 above Montreal, or even the ones that are in a playoff spot right now, they're going to be playing with pressure, and Montreal is going to be playing with zero pressure. I call it the Galchenyuk effect. Remember, like we all were, amazed when Galchenyuk had that one year where he scored 30 goals, and he scored like I think like 17 of them in the last 30 games of the season or whatever. He was on a heater, but that's when the games meant absolutely nothing. There was zero pressure. So Montreal is going to play loose.
But on the
Montreal is
flip
going
side,
to,
I will say to you, Marco,
like
I relance you, maybe a debate here. The team, you have so many teams on the wild card battle where the Montreal Canadiens going to face what the
yeah.
team can have to win. They have to win. They cannot go there. So,
That's what I mean.
I'm sorry.
That's what I mean. But that you're making my point. Those teams are going to be holding the stick tight, and Montreal's going to have zero pressure. You get Allen or Montembeault continues to play that their way that they're playing, and yeah. So I'm not saying that they're going to have a more above 500 record, but you know, people always underestimate the impact of the pressure of the team that has no pressure. They tend to outperform, and some teams make really bad decisions based on the performance of the team that is already eliminated, right? So it's very hard to evaluate a team that is already eliminated because all the pressure factors of playing real hockey, to be honest, like competitive hockey when something is at stake, don't exist. So it's very hard for you to properly assess a team. So it's very hard, like, so really the best gauge that we have to understand, do they have a chance to finish bottom five, is injuries. What's going to happen with that? Who's going to actually be on the team? Like if they do move some players, and then ultimately, what are the other teams going to do? Like if Chikrin does leave uh, Phoenix, Arizona, then that's going to impact that team, and they're probably going to have poorer
But
results,
they
right?
win without him right now.
I know. I've said this before. I think Tourigny is such an amazing coach, and I hope one day he can coach the Habs. Like, well, 7-8 years from now when St. Louis is done, like I would love to see him coach
So
the
here
Habs.
why I would
Love
say
him.
to you, Marco, they finished 5. Vancouver is behind them with 2 points behind Vancouver. Arizona
Yeah,
is behind them with 3 points behind. Vancouver
yeah,
and they are all the same number the game, right? San Jose is 5
yeah.
points behind and they have 1 game additional. I would put out San Jose on this moment. But here's the really good important you need to know. Vancouver and Arizona played 3 times again until the end of the season. So
Against each other.
yeah.
Okay.
So 0-3 or 3-0, one team jumped over Montreal Canadiens, right? And the team has won 1 and 2, but right now both teams reached the Montreal Canadiens at the end. So I think if we consider that, that's a good situation for Montreal Canadiens to go 28 and finish just about. Now Montreal have to play one more time the San Jose and one more time Arizona. No, not Arizona, San Jose, and they play Anaheim. 2 games next week on the West Coast when they leave for 4 game. That will be really important for Montreal. Want to play the Kings, Anaheim, and what they're going to do against them, because that will be really Montreal can only win 1 and 2. That will help in the standing over there. But again, I believe they're going to finish at the bottom 5.
Listen, that's an interesting analysis for sure. Like I didn't know that, but again, what happens if any of the if Vancouver trades Besser, if they trade a couple of other players, what is that going to mean to Vancouver, right? Like then you can argue, because like look at their goaltending right now. Like I know Demko's eventually going to come back, but who do they have now? They sent Spencer Martin down to the
And
AHL,
now
so they
they
have
have the rookie Slivo,
yeah.
and he won yesterday, by the way, his first
Swapple
W.
yeah.
I think it was his second game back and back again. Vancouver,
Pedersen's on fire for them too.
Yeah, the Vancouver, they got 3 games. They play one more time against Anaheim Ducks, Vancouver, Marco, and they play Chicago another time. And
if there's any shot, like
and
there's
Anaheim Ducks twice. So they play Ducks twice, 3 times Arizona, and they play the Chicago Blackhawks 1 time, and the next 23 game they have to play.
Yeah, the only team that I think has an opportunity to maybe finish ahead of Montreal would be Vancouver, but again, it depends if they end up trading a bunch of key pieces. That's gonna be very difficult if they continue to have a rookie goalie in net. Listen, he's probably full of adrenaline right now, but over time that's going to catch up, right? So that's my concern, right? Is can Vancouver really finish ahead of Montreal? It really depends on variables that we just don't know, but
Yeah, absolutely about that.
It's going to be crazy to watch.
We are almost at the end of the show already. The time flies, man, when we talk each other about Montreal Canadiens. Tuesday, they play on the road again, the New Jersey Devils. Then they play only Friday night again, the Flyers. Friday night, and then they play back-to-back game. They go to back home. This is the only game they have at home, and then they play against the Ottawa Senator. Then they're going to go all the way after that on the West Coast, USA, and Anaheim, the Ducks, and Sharks. That's what I was talking about earlier. So this is the schedule for the week. And what do you expect Montreal, do this week, or what are your expectation for the rest of the week number 19 for Montreal?
Yeah, so Montreal will be on the West Coast during the trade deadline, so should be interesting there. But before we get there, I looking at these matchups, Coach. These are not good. These are not teams that Montreal usually match up well against at all. New Jersey, just a fast, in your face style. Same thing with Philly. Same thing with Ottawa. This is the antithesis. Like but it's good. You know what? Like we need to play like playing teams like Chicago and Toronto that don't really play that way. You can develop, like I was saying earlier, you can develop bad habits, right? So to me, what I would be looking for in these matchups, I don't care about results. I want to see, are they going to be able to play well under that type of pressure systems that those coaches use. So great opportunity for St. Louis to message, like he can use the two bad results that he's gotten here and get everybody back on track. Focus on playing some good hockey. Let's try to at least get Dach back in the lineup. Dear God, it's such a difference with him not there. And let's get Monahan up in the lineup, Coach. Dear God, like
that'd be great to see that. If I ask you one last question of the show, it would be like, which player are you looking for? Or the fact you mentioned like Monahan, Dach, but a specific player right now is in the lineup for Montreal Canadiens, and the next 3 games you would like to you pay maybe more attention for that players.
Yeah, like I said, I've been harping on him all episode, but again, I'm looking at Suzuki. Like he needs to step it up and play a little bit more solid. Let's see if that idea of playing him less minutes, if that's a trend that continues. But I really need to see him step up and start to play more responsible two-way hockey. He's the leader of the team, Coach. So this is what we expect of him. We know points come and go. There's, you can't control that. But let's have Nick play the right way. We know he can do it. He's a responsive. It's in his mind. He's done it in the playoffs many times. So let's just see it on a regular basis and lead the team the right way.
Yeah, so right, Marko, that's a nice way to finish the show. But before we leave, we invite everybody, don't forget, guys, click on the likes, of course, for this great BRUNCH, your Sunday rendezvous, every Sunday at 11 o'clock a.m. Share this on your social media, and definitely leave us a comment. We'll be back next week, Marko, together for sure, constantly talking about the trade deadline. But until then, we wish you, Marko, an amazing, great weeks. And for all the fans of the Hockey Nation show, enjoy, of course, maybe the week number 3 of the month of February. Thanks so much, Marko, for your participation tonight. This morning.
Have a great week, everybody. Thanks.